So a lot happened really quickly, didn't it?
Within a few seconds, yeah. And when I walked around the front of the car, I mean, you know, when you visualize this, it's like slow motion, but it really all happened in a couple of seconds. And when I walked around to the front of the car and Tim was yelling, Ryan, don't pick it up, don't pick it up. And I was yelling, don't shoot him, don't shoot him. And all of a sudden there was an officer behind us with his gun pointed to the back of Tim's head. Here, he didn't even know who was who. And I don't know what happened, but...
A police officer?
It wasn't a state cop, was it? No,
Yeah,
it was a probation officer.
No, it was...
The two came from this way, and the other one came up from behind. That was the third one. It wasn't a state trooper. The one state trooper was over here, and the other one was behind the vehicle. The guy that came up behind us was a parole officer.
Oh, I never really knew. I know he had a Glock.
They weren't in uniform?
No, there were some plainclothes. Yeah, and there was also some plainclothes.
There were 3 parole officers and 2 state policemen.
And did they identify themselves as they approached Ryan?
No words were spoken. It happened so fast. I mean, if the trooper behind his car had 2 more seconds, he would have had him.
To grab him?
Oh yeah, because he was still leaning up against the door, and he was right behind him. And as soon as Ryan saw the 2 parole officers come walking right out into the open, that was it. He jumped in his car, and he was just a little bit quicker than the cop. But he almost had him.
You think the sight of those 2 guys approaching him scared him?
Oh, yeah. As soon as he saw him, he leaped for his vehicle. If they would not have walked out in front of where he could see him, that cop would have had him. He would have had him on the ground.
And the whole time that we were talking, Ryan kept looking out towards the road,
because that's the only way to come in.
He was afraid someone was going to come.
Yeah, that was the only way in.
Yeah, but when we kind of moved over right in front of the car, Dina was maybe 3 feet away at the most, and I was actually in the center of the car, and I think my knee was up against the bumper. And as soon as he, like Dina said, as soon as he picked the gun up and started to bring it up, that's when the shots started. And, it's amazing.
The state police shot.
Yeah, state police, probation. I'm not really sure. There was shots coming from different directions.
Somebody yelled at us to get back after the cop come up behind him, and Tim went like this, like, where the hell did he come from?
Yeah.
And he had the gun pointed right at him.
But
I don't think he knew who Tim was, and supposedly, and I didn't hear this, but supposedly, because I asked Roger Way, who wasn't there, but he interviewed his guys, why they came walking right out in the open like that, and why there was a guy behind Tim with a gun pointed at him. And he said, well, they weren't sure where Ryan was or what was going on, and somebody said on the radio, he's on the move. So I don't know who said that. It might have been the probation officer from behind, or either way, saying he's on the move. What does that mean?
Did any of the shots...
He wasn't on the move. He went from the doorway to his truck. That's it. I'm thinking they mistook him for Ryan.
Did any of the shots from the state police hit anyone?
No.
No, just the vehicle.
As far as we know, and I called Kiesling to confirm that there were no other bullet holes in his body, and he said there wasn't.
And we also talked to the funeral director, and he confirmed
they checked for us too. They went down and checked.
But when Ryan pulled the trigger, I just turned around and I just took off running, and I literally almost ran my face into the barrel. It was now I still don't know if it was probation or police, but he had a Glock, and it's one thing to have somebody pointing a gun at you, but when you look at somebody and that guy that's holding a gun on you, I fell down on the ground because I actually had to duck, and I tripped and fell, and then the pistol came down. He was still pointing at me. That's one thing. But when somebody that's holding a gun you can see the fear in his eyes, that really scared me, because I wasn't sure if he was going to pull the trigger.
And I don't think he knew who you were either.
No.
But the bottom line is, we called and asked for help, and things didn't go exactly the way we would have hoped, but and it's hard to say it's anybody's fault. Things didn't work out exactly the way they should have, but I think if the state police would have handled the whole thing, Ryan would still be alive. And I think that, unfortunately, in a stressful crisis situation like this, I just feel that those guys were not trained. The probation parole guys were not trained to handle this kind of situation, and like I said, the state policeman that came up behind his car was about 2 seconds from having him. And then, because of the article in the newspaper, it just made it worse. Because, you know, not only was the article quoted from a person that wasn't even there, it was only the day after they hadn't even interviewed anybody, or the investigation hadn't even really started. And how, you know, how do they have the right, you know, what kind of integrity do they have to put something like this in the paper when they haven't even finished their investigation? They haven't even talked to us. They never even asked us any questions.
Did the newspaper ever call you guys?
No. The newspaper.
What did the state police do as far as a follow-up investigation?
We never heard from any of the state police except for when we called them to find out when we could get the stuff out of Ryan's car and things like that. They said they would give us a little bit of time because it was such a tragedy and they wanted to give us some time. But then we did get a call, and we both were interviewed by
Internal Affairs
Division of the State Police about it was 6 weeks.
After
5
the
or
event?
6 weeks after it happened,
Yeah,
something like that.
6 weeks at least, because we just.
And then he came back with the report, which he gave us to read over and sign, and you know, I mean, he interviewed me for quite a while, and the report doesn't state everything, because you know you can go on and on and on, but he picked out, you know, the important things to put in the report, and I read it, and it looked fine to me, and I signed it.
But
there's a lot of details, of course, that aren't in there. And so when the Internal Affairs Division in Harrisburg gets all their reports, you know, they're not going to hear all of it. They're only going to see what's on those papers.
Yeah. And we were interviewed separately, and you could tell, just by the questions that they were asking, you could tell what the state police and parole people were saying, and he was trying to confirm it. And like I said, we were interviewed separate, but we both had the same story. And I know one of the questions he asked me several times was what the officer said, or if I heard anything when this happened. And I told him, I said, you know, I never really heard anything. It was kind of an eerie silence, and that's pretty much the exact same thing that Dina told him.